ILTV Plus, your news from Israel and more 24/7. Start your free trial today. Subscribe at ILTV.tv and watch from any device.
And now our final story tonight. The coronavirus was bad enough on its own. But to make matters worse, the pandemic also highlighting, if not exacerbating, another terrible issue: loneliness. By all accounts, a rapidly growing number of people are increasingly starved for human connection. And this in turn leading to huge shifts in the economy. Economic consumer behavior expert and assistant professor Vili Abraham here with the details. Vili, thanks so much for joining us again. Now tell me about the isolation or loneliness economy.
We're talking about a phenomenon which is on the rise since 2015. According to research, to a recent study that was published, 30% of all millennials feel lonely most of the time, and not only the United States, also across Western Europe and Asia. But although we do have to point out that people have been lonely for a long time, predating COVID-19, but it has exacerbated over COVID-19 because people were, stuck home. We're not able to visit friends and family. So it really has exacerbated, and a lot of companies have taken advantage of this lonely economy to make a lot of money.
So that's it. So let's talk a little bit about, the good, the bad, and the ugly of this loneliness economy. There are companies that will sell you friends, will sell you cuddling, will send you all sorts of, will sell you all sorts of services. What's the good in this, and what's the really terrible end of this spectrum of the industry?
Well, the good thing is that when people are lonely, they're more likely to suffer from heart disease, stroke, depression, and even premature death. And that's why these companies like Rent a Friend that we can see on the screen now, they provide services. First of all, what's interesting is that they have a pool of 620,000 platonic friends who will go to dinner with you, grab drinks after work, and even go to a concert with you for extra fee. And we're talking about a service that costs $40 an hour. And there's even an interesting story of a guy called Carl who was very, very lonely. And he paid $80 an hour in order to be cuddled and caressed. And this added up to $2,000 a month. And unfortunately, this guy lost his apartment because he wasn't able to pay for rent. And he went to sleep in his car, but he still paid for this service. So it just shows you how lonely and desperate people can get. That's the downside.
Right.
That's the upside. But the downside is, the question is whether it is ethical to charge people for being their friend.
And that's actually really my next question. These are very vulnerable people. I'm sorry. So are there regulations? What can and should the regulations be if there aren't any? And where do we draw the line, again, with this ethical issue?
Well, as far as companies and apps that provide a service for you to be able to find your friend, they're flourishing. If we look in Israel, there are also a lot of elderly people, like many parts of the world, that are lonely. And what the government does through different universities and colleges, it provides scholarship to students who do accompany or provide, a more social or help the elderly to become less lonely by spending time with them. So maybe the government can encourage students to provide such services to other people who are lonely, and thereby pay for their scholarship, which is, skyrocketing, not in Israel that much, but in other parts of the world, like in the States.
All right. And where are these markets flourishing most? Because of course you mentioned that this is a worldwide issue, we could call it.
Well, according to data that I have, it's really not something that is specific, but we do know that it's flourishing in Western Europe and in North America in general. But again, all over the world, we do have people who are lonely. And even in Israel, there are some Facebook groups that offer you friendship. People who are lonely or new immigrants who have no family here, they're able to find friends through Facebook. So it seems to be happening across the globe.
All right. Vili Abraham, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights.
Pleasure.